When you zoom out from the universe, you see the way that the clusters of galaxies are compiled. It looks like neurons in a brain.
Really?
Yes. The exact same structure of the inside of a human conscious brain. And then what's incredible is you realize that the universe itself, being conscious, it doesn't really know what's going on here in the third dimension, but it has its friends. Human beings, cats, dogs, a rose, a blade of grass, even a rock. And what is it doing? Everything we know in the third dimension vibrates at a specific frequency. You can't even come to a complete halt. You can't make an atom stop vibrating. Everything vibrates. It's impossible to get to absolute zero unless you create these artificial laboratory conditions. So that means that everything is resonating and vibrating and sending information, in my opinion, back to the source.
Even if something's dead, it's still alive?
The atoms in something dead are still vibrating. Really? Because they're still atoms. They may convert themselves into something different, like a dead thing may
moving.
It's moving, right? Even the atoms inside of burnt carbon, they're vibrating. The atoms inside of a dead body, they're vibrating, and they're getting ready to be recycled back into this grand system of life. And could become something else. This transformation occurs. Right? Nothing really ever truly dies. It just transforms.
So would you say the universe then has its own set of consciousness, or its own consciousness, and its friends are the planets, the stars, beings, trees, water,
right?
And it's sending data to the universe?
No, we're sending data back to yes, correct.
It is
and everything else is sending data back. We're transmitting it back because consciousness is not local to the brain. It's downloaded as a stream. The brain itself, the physical brain, is a quantum computer to process that data and harness that stream of spiritual energy. But we also are two-way. When we're transmitting back, what is it like to be Billy Carson? What is it like to be Lewis Howes? What lessons has Billy and Lewis learned throughout their entire life? The experience, what experiences are they having, good and bad? It's collecting information.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're in the 3D right now.
Yeah.
What is the difference between the 3D and the 5D?
Okay. That's a great question. So the third dimension, I'll tell you first how scientists or what physicists believe this actually is. They created in the laboratory eighth dimensional quasi-crystals. And those eighth dimensional quasi-crystals, when turned to a particular angle, cast down a fourth dimensional quasi-crystal. And when they twist that to a particular angle, it casts out a sphere, which is a shadow, a light shadow, a shadow of light from a higher dimension, which they believe is our known universe. So that we're talking about now beginning to understand the basic mechanism that's creating the universe itself, okay? So with that being said, understanding that, we now know that as you go up in dimensions, you're going up into higher levels of perception of realities. So you have the fourth dimension, which people used to think it was time, but that's just an hour that we utilize here in the third dimension. Technically, there is a fourth dimension called a tesseract. And above that tesseract, you get to the fifth dimension. It gives you even a more broader expansion of, or understanding or view of what's really going on in all the realms beneath it, in itself and also beneath it.
Wow.
So every time you step up a dimension, it's like becoming an ascended master. You're moving higher and higher through levels of consciousness. We know that even gravity, through science, they believe it's streaming down from higher dimensions all the way down to the third, making it one of the weakest forces here in the third dimension, because it's truncating all the way down through these other higher dimensions as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is it possible for humans to get out of the third dimension into a higher dimension?
There's a couple of different tablets that talk about this. In the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he talks about being able to do this, being able to transcend dimensions through consciousness and actually having this out-of-body experience to take you to higher dimensions. He even gives the code words, which are really frequencies to utter to get through the gates of Arulu.
Wow.
Other ancients in India and Egypt and Asia, and even the indigenous cultures of the Aboriginals in Australia all have this same understanding that it's possible to transcend dimensions. They call it like becoming an ascended master, becoming a sage, and understanding how to tap into these higher dimensions. But what's interesting is the Brain Institute, just a couple of years ago, discovered that the human brain connects to 11 dimensions.
That's crazy.
Consciously, we are connecting. So they also saw something incredible, that synapses, when they were watching these synapses, unexpectedly, they would vanish from the third dimension. They would go somewhere, and then they would reappear randomly. So they're now hypothesizing that the human mind is also quantum entangling with information, data, or something else in another place, and then reappearing here. So it just gets deeper and deeper.
I guess, where are our dreams then? What dimension are our dreams when we sleep?
That's incredible. I would always think that from my perspective that dreams are probably closer to reality.
Really?
Yeah. I think that, because the ancients, like the Aboriginals, call this dream time in this realm now. The Hopi tribe called this sleepy time. And what they're alluding to is that this reality, that this thing that we think is reality is not real, but that we have a higher self in another realm. And that a lot of the times the voice we hear in our head that we are proclaiming as this other source, or maybe sometimes even other deity, really is our own self talking to us.
Wow.
And that there is another version of us that exists in a higher dimension, and we're spiritually connected with that higher source. And that dreams potentially are glimpses of higher dimensions, or being able to access some of these higher dimensions through consciousness.
You have so much content online that I've seen. We talk about these kind of, aliens and pyramids and kind of all these different things, different dimensions. But I think the stuff that I like the most that you talk about, and I think that my audience resonates with the most, is around manifesting their dream reality. Like, they have an idea in their mind of what they want to create.
Yeah.
A business, a relationship, get their health to a certain level. They want to achieve an accomplishment in a sport or musical success, whatever it might be. They want to take something they have in their mind and alchemize it into the real world that we're in, if this is real, right? But they want to create it in this reality.
Yes.
And I'm curious, with all your studies, because you've been studying this for decades, about kind of ancient wisdom, forbidden wisdom.
Yeah.
But also you've been studying modern philosophy and modern, science as well.
Oh, yeah.
So what does the ancient wisdom you've researched and modern science taught you about manifesting?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. See, the ancient wisdom, you discovered that there were these beings in the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets, and they were called the Anuna, and later they were called the Anunnaki. And in there, some of them call themselves the ordainers of destiny. And what's so interesting about this is they actually had the capability or foreseeing potential outcomes based on whatever agenda they want to put out. But they would envision these potential outcomes. They would see them on this crystal tablet, which is so bizarre, first of all. That's just 6,000 years ago, or maybe even more. But then when they found the outcome that they wanted to happen, they would then create action steps toward that particular outcome, nudging that outcome into reality, collapsing it into the reality tunnel, making it a part of this third dimension while they're alive and living on that timeline. And I learned that really from them. I had done this myself by accident as a younger kid, just coming up with the idea, like, if I want something, I've got to put action steps behind it. And I remember I was at my house and living in Opelika down in Miami, Florida, unincorporated Dade County, a very harsh neighborhood. And I was banned from leaving the front porch because the neighborhood was so deadly. But I was so tired of seeing my friends go to the ice cream truck. And I'm like, we're both poor. How can they get it every day? Like, how? And so I said to myself, I'm going to take a risk. And I got a Winn-Dixie milk crate that we had, and I loaded up all my toys, and I went door to door around the block and asked for donations for my toys, a penny, a nickel, a dollar, whatever. I just want to have money for the ice cream truck. And people were giving me money, these parents. When I got back to my front door, I actually had $13 and change. And I was like,
how old were you?
Wow. I was 7 years old.
7.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm sorry, 8 years old, or 8, forgive me. 8 years
That's a lot of money back in the 70s.
That was a lot of money.
As an 8-year-old,
yeah, that was a lot of money.
$13 at 8, you're rich.
Yeah, you're rich. And you had a lot of money because ice cream was like, I only wanted the bazooka bubble gums. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I had a conscious thought. I envisioned potential outcome would be I would have money in my hands to buy my gum from the truck, and I took action. So it's conscious thought multiplied by action equals manifestation, which I then read later in ancient texts. That's what this shirt is. Wow. CT multiplied by A equals M. Conscious thought multiplied by action equals manifestation.
Wow.
That's the formula.
Thank you for watching this video. If you want more inspiring clips like this, make sure to click right here to subscribe and click right here to watch that next video that is specific to support you in your life.